Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me on the stream today. I'm going to give a few more minutes here to allow maybe one or two more people to pop into the stream, and then we're going to get things started. We're going to be talking about a whole host of different changes today. We're going to go through some of the multiplayer stuff, and then at the end of the stream, we're going to end up at the campaign side of things. And I'm going to take you through the campaign and what we've got done so far, and kind of, talk a little bit about maybe where we need to go. At which point, we'll have the floor open for questions. So if you have any questions or any suggestions or things like that for the mod development moving forward, that'll be a great time to post them. But just for the sake of clarity and not having me bounce around too much, throughout the stream, just try to keep whatever questions you may have sort of focused on what it is that we're talking about at the moment. Little things, and then some of the bigger questions, maybe keep those towards the end. In any case, I suppose we can probably get started here. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Audio levels are just fine. Might be able to turn them up just a little bit. There we go. So the patch is going to be coming out actually this upcoming weekend. I'm shooting to have it out by hopefully Friday, so you will have your hands on all of the new and fun goodies. But before we get into that, there's quite a lot of changes, so I think maybe a nice little primer would be quite helpful for you, especially if you're one of the people who are interested in multiplayer, and that happens to be where we're going to start today. So we're going to take a look at some of the new factions and a bunch of the new units that will all be available to you. Do note that I am making some last-minute changes to a few things that got missed in the shuffle. Some of the campaign units do need to have their statistics updated, their costs and things like that. So assume that if it's outside the core roster, then it's something that can and very likely will change in the extremely near future within the next few days. But yeah, so let's take a look here and go over some of the new little classifications that I think will be useful for some of the more multiplayer-minded people. So when you go through our little whatever you call this, the blurb here, you're going to see all the stats and stuff broken down. That's nothing all too new, but I have added a new keyword system that some have some very specific meanings and some have a little bit more general meanings. So Scout usually means that unit has multiple bonuses in different kinds of terrain. So you see combat bonus there in woods or snow, and that's always going to be a 2+. So anything lower than 2, if it's only just 1, then it won't actually show up in this little blurb here at the bottom where it says combat bonuses in the woods or snow. So that's helpful to know. That's where that comes from. Screen is going to mean that unit is going to be able to move a little bit faster. And light infantry in general are going to be very, very quick indeed. So you're going to have light infantry kind of zooming around the field. They're going to be outpacing heavy infantry and medium infantry in many cases. The only things that will really be able to catch up to them in most instances are going to be cavalry. So yeah, you have your terrain bonuses, your speed bonuses are in there, and then you have a racial bonus as well. Generally, you can expect your Edine to be a little bit better defensively, whereas your Noldor and your Sindar elves are going to have some bonuses to their attack and defense and things like that. And then they, of course, interact with things in the new overhaul, which is really where all this comes from in important ways. But that's mostly behind the scenes stuff. Basically, the Edine thing there, or the racial classification, just gives you sort of a general idea of obviously the unit's racial heritage, but things that it can do. So extra melee defense and morale and shield are things that you can expect from things with the Edine tag. Moving on now, we have the Footman of Hemer. Actually, I might as well just do all of these. Well, I can't really put them all into game. I don't think you guys will see them soon enough anyways. But yeah, so the Footman of Hemer, you're going to see the little Noldor classification in there. You're going to see, again, all of their speed, morale, and things like that. That has, I think, fluctuated quite a lot since the last patch. Noldor is just going to mean that they hit pretty damn hard, especially on more defensive units like swords. That can make a really big difference in how well that unit is able to perform and how many things that they can grind down. One of the big sort of general principles of the overhaul is trying to bring back some more of the specialization that we really started out strong with in the earlier days of Silmarillion Total War. So you are going to see that brought, I think, to the forefront again, where your heavy infantry will be very good at, doing heavy infantry things, but they are quite slow. So if you look at the speed difference between these two here, these guys are probably a little bit high. I might have to shift that, but I would expect that to be, around 1.3, 1.4 with the screen tag, and then these guys are going to be at 1.025, so they are significantly faster. And then we're going to get into some of the campaign units here as well. I won't go through all of them on the battle maps and whatever, because there's just too many of them. I think we've probably added several factions worth of campaign units, which you can access by in multiplayer by just going to the all units thing here. But yeah, I won't go through it. But yeah, they have some there's a very large breadth and depth of new things, new units especially, that are going to be available for you in multiple eras. But in any case, we got the Noldor Nandor here, so we get another racial classification. Nandor are generally a little bit faster, better missile units, things like that, things that you expect from the Green Elves. And let's see. Yes, so then we get into some of the weapon classifications. One of the questions that we get probably most often, believe it or not, from newer players getting into the mod is like, is this a pike? Is this a halberd? Is this a two-handed spear? I know it sounds sort of wild, but it is a question that we get a lot. So you're going to see these weapon tags in there as well. So this is going to be a pike unit, which means that it's going to have the highest range of any of the other polearm units. It's going to be able to keep units at a much greater distance and avoid incoming melee damage in that way. Basically, their offense is giving them a good defense, even though they've only got a little bit of melee defense. Again, don't pay too much attention to the stats on these guys. This is one of those things that I think does need to change a little bit. Move on over here, and then we move into other things such as the new hatred tags. So is something good against another very specific sort of enemy? And yes indeed they are. Many of our monster units sort of are internally classified by the game engine as being elephants, so they are a species of mounted unit, which means that you can give them specific bonuses, penalties, and you can even adjust certain global settings to work for or against them. So this is one of the new tags. Hatred Balrogs just means that they have a very, very strong additional bonus, in addition to the stats that you see there, against Balrogs, which should be easy to find. They're in the Angband faction, and yeah, that's pretty much what it means. Next we have the Paragon trait. All that means is that where a lot of units, like say heavy infantry, will take penalties in certain kinds of terrain, I believe snow and forest, obviously, would be the two big ones that heavy infantry take penalties in. These ones do not. Most of the time, this is going to be confined to your legendary companies and to your general's bodyguards, just to make them a little bit more effective and to kind of edge them out. Numbers are very important in Silmarillion, so when you're throwing a unit of, say, 43 Otorn Mighty Mo at another unit of I don't know, 250 armored infantry from Angband, they will actually struggle because they are only armed with a longsword, and the Angband infantry have very, very high armor values. But this is one of those things that can, help in certain situations to, push them over and sort of bring that quality to the forefront. Will still need to support them, but yeah, that's basically the idea behind Paragon and that particular tag. Move on over here, you have the Accursed of Aquilonde. You're going to have Paragon Forest, so they don't take penalties in Forest. It just means that it's zeroed out, whereas other units probably would. And then you have the Legendary tag, so you can tell your Legendary units from one another. And then you have Relentless as well. Relentless, for those a little bit unfamiliar, it means that they don't have a stagger animation. So when they take incoming damage, but they block it with melee defense or armor, usually there's a bit of a stagger, and it interrupts the flow of their attacking. So Relentless is just a passive DPS boost because they don't take those extra few seconds in between getting hit and when they can attack next. It also means they're extremely efficient at dealing with large crowds of units and fighting at their absolute peak, even when completely surrounded. Moving on here, we have some of the more the campaign-oriented units. Again, some of these may need to change in the near... Actually, the Feanor ones were done properly. They're just fine, now that I think about it. So, Raonin Castanir, this is one of the general's bodyguards for one of the Sons of Feanor. We have the Uhuro Atarinse. I didn't make these names, so couldn't tell you how to pronounce them. Please don't ask. But that is another general's bodyguard here. You've got some of the Hounds of Kelegorn. I believe that's his Noldoran name. And you've got some more Edine units here, the Amborusa Raniari, which I think is one of the bodyguards for one of the two Feanor twins, whose name I can't quite recall. And then you move into the other things down there. Let's see. Then we have some more interesting classifications here. I just have to find them. There we go. So we're going to have the hybrid. Basically what hybrid means is that these units are going to be a little bit more expensive, but they are specialized in two different areas. They have less ammunition, of course. You can see the difference there. They've got like 8 ammo, where normally you'd expect like 16, I think, on a dedicated archer. And they also don't benefit from certain infantry-based things, but they do have a overall increased level of melee statistics, so that's going to affect their melee defense and their attack. Just another little classification that helps some of these units stand out. And you're going to find that some of these units, I think, need to be updated, but you are going to find that across basically the entire Edine tier within the House of Fingolfin. You've got a few extra units here added as well. A whole whack of Edine have been added. There's 1, 2, 3, and I think there's a fourth one hanging around here somewhere. There should be another spearman. I might have goofed up his entry in the EDU, but there is definitely another spearman that's around here. Then you've got 3 new Fingon units, which will be available in your campaign. I think we've about covered most of the sort of newer classifications. Again, you're going to see a lot of new Gondolin units here. Actually, the Legendary Company as well is being added. But I want to take a minute to talk about Valinor, because I think Valinor is one of the factions that is changing the absolute most in Silmarillion's new patch. So we've got a few new Maiar units, actually a whole bunch of them, and I'm going to show you them on the field because it won't take us too long to go through them all, and then I can sort of talk about what's new in Valinor, because mostly it's the Maiar. The Maiar are very, very new. Let's see if we have any questions and so forth here as well. Nope, nothing new so far. All right. So we're going to take a look at some of these guys, and then I will do a little practical demonstration of some of their capabilities. So the first and foremost, we have the Doomsmen of Mandos, which are obviously a Maiar dedicated to Mandos. They are relatively slow. They don't have incredible attack statistics. Obviously, not a whole lot of damage here with a melee attack of 3. It is armor piercing, so when it hits, it can hit hard. And they've got very low armor and quite high defense skill. The basic idea behind this sort of unit is, I guess you can think of it as the inevitability of fate. They're very slow. Once they get into, or before they get into combat, they actually have a very interesting projectile. Now, what it does, it's called the Despair of the Fianturi. I'm going to show it to you right now, actually, and we'll move on to the rest of these guys. I'll march these guys forward here. And it's a little bit of a different projectile, especially when you're playing in multiplayer. This is something that will take a little bit of getting used to and is very much akin to some of the new Avari units. So what it is going to do is drop a small cloud, a small green cloud, and this is going to greatly affect the morale of units in it, making them much more likely to rout. But the longer things spend in it, the more damage it will actually do. So you can see the new little projectile there. And if we wait here, it's going to continuously tick. And watch these units here. The more time they spend in it, it starts to tick a little bit closer to the end. So there we go. You'll see another one in there. Hopefully we'll be able to lock these guys in there. It takes about 15 or 17 or so seconds. And then units who walk through it, there you go. Yeah, you can see them slowly begin to die. The basic idea here is it's like a ticking clock. And the longer that units spend inside of this projectile, the more likely they are to suffer catastrophic losses. But you do have a very large window of opportunity. But like I said, it's probably about 15 to 20 seconds, I think. And damage starts to tick down at the 15 mark. And then it will gradually tick up a little bit more closer to the end. So potentially very useful. And sometimes, as we saw here, it will do almost nothing at all. So you need to be able to lock those units down. It is something you have to plan a little bit for. And then once they're done, you have a unit of Maiar that has a lot of HP. 3 hit points is practically unheard of for a unit especially of this size in Silmarillion. And yeah, it's just a nice little roadblock. So potentially a unit that's very strong in sieges, especially on the defense. And we will hopefully within the next few months have a Barad Ithel map for you guys to play around with this unit in particular on. Moving on now. We're going to take a look at the Ember Weavers of Oyolose. Now, this is a replacement for the Valinor Catapult. This is essentially a living and maneuverable artillery piece. They do a ton of damage to bunched up infantry, which you're going to see right here. Allow them to wind up. They have a lot less range than your average catapult. These guys should probably stop shooting. See that fire come down in there, and it's going to basically tick twice. It will do a decent amount of damage to those units. They fire fairly quickly, but they do have a little bit less range, and that's going to be true for pretty well all of the Valinor Maiar that are meant to be replacements for their artillery. So the idea here is that because Valinor is a very strong faction, having a little bit of a lower range on here forces them to come forward towards people. So they can't just sit back forever, pick you off with these new really powerful and very maneuverable units that potentially can be very hard to lock down, and then just move in for the kill and finish you off. Valinor has to expose themselves to damage to counterplay in order to use these units effectively. And cavalry can shut them down, lots and lots of archers, because they are relatively lightly armored, only with about 4 or so armor there. They do have a decent shield, but a lot of archer units are now going to be actually above or equal to the shield value, so they'll be able to do a lot more damage very quickly. So it is, I think, a very tightly designed unit. A lot of potential for damage, as you can see here, especially with that secondary tick that waits for people to kind of move in. But yeah, very, very interesting unit. So over here, we're going to have the Crystal Singers. Now this is your anti-artillery piece. Think of it as akin to your ballista. So we're going to give them opportunity here to fire their little crystals. You can see them right there. It's actually a crystal model that I made, and this is not really going to do anything to these units. It will knock some of them over, and it's a little bit disruptive, and yeah, you know, picking off 1 or 2 light infantry here, you know, now and again, who really cares? But against artillery and against even castle walls, these can be very useful as sappers or counter artillery fire. Again, they follow that same principle of being very lightly armored. They have, you know, only sort of a middling shield value, and then of course they have less range. So you have to expose these things to counterfire in order to actually make any use of them. So the same principle applies. And then of course we have this one over here, which is a very hyper specialized unit. Actually, I think we got this Griffin model in the animations from Botet. So if you guys have not had a look at Beginning of the End Times, I highly recommend you do so. Very talented modding team, and they've made a a dearth of resources that really everyone, I think, uses at this point. In any case, we have the Heralds of Manwë. And their role is as an anti-armor sort of beast hunter. So let's go ahead and start this. It's not really going to do a ton to these infantry, but if we turn this on here, oops. I'll turn this off for everybody else. You'll see them tossing these little bolts of fire and lightning. And what this is intended to do is to hunt monsters. So things like the Balrog, things like Ents, the grandfather of the Deep Woods from the Avari, other things like that. This projectile has a particular trait that makes it extremely powerful against elephants. So you can just harass them, you can move them around. They're very quick, but they also don't do... They're middling when it comes to actual melee combat, unless they're fighting against like monsters and things like that, or other cavalry. But if you were to throw them in against some spears, they do have a bit of a funny charge sometimes, where they'll swoop through things and disrupt them, but not really do a ton of damage. But when you actually throw them in here against infantry that's able to hold their own, then they don't really do a whole lot. Yeah, see, we're really slowly trying to whack our way through some of these light infantry who most other cavalry units would be able to kill, dozens of in a matter of seconds. So they have a very specialized role. They do have some other uses outside of that, because obviously that ammunition can run dry very quickly. But overall, this is a unit that you want to take if you think you're going to be facing a lot of monsters. So if you're playing against Angband or something, and you think Angband is going to go hard into the Balrogs, or especially the Urloki, they're extremely efficient at hunting down Urloki, then this would be a unit that you may want to take. So that's about it for the practical demonstration there. I'm going to go back to talking about some of the new tags and things like that, just so you can kind of understand how to read the army creation screen a little bit better. So let's move on over here, and you'll see all of their spells here are going to be named in the descriptions as well. So Pyroclastic Burst, Despair of the Feanturi, and Ice Flows. So we move on over here. They have the Judgment of Manwë, and they also have the Beast Hunter tag, which is important. They're also lacking the Beast tag, which most units of this type should have, so I'll have to add that afterwards. So to talk a little bit more about that, let's maybe go over to here. So looking at the Krangwi Broodmother, you've got Beast. Beast tag, all that means is that that unit is an elephant. So all things that apply to elephants, spears, halberds, pikes, particular ammunition like the Heralds of Manwë have that we just saw, things like that, or things with the Beast Hunter tag, are going to have particular bonuses against it. There is a little bit of a fuzzy line, I think, between very easily being able to visually identify what is an elephant and what isn't, unless you know what you're looking for. Generally, when you're looking at elephants, you're going to be looking for something that's dealing area effect damage, that has, one or very small numbers of models in the unit. If something is a single entity unit, right away that's a clue that it's an elephant. But that's more like sort of technical meta knowledge. This is going to help you identify them right at the screen, and you'll be able to figure out counters to them and things like that while you're building your armies. And then a unit with the Beast Hunter tag, again, you're going to find those right here. So these are going to be cavalry. They've got their little racial tag there as well. Orc, you can expect those units to just hit harder. That's what they do. That's what they're good at. And have a little bit lower defense as well. So generally a bit more throwaway kinds of units when you see that Orc tag. I think... Oh, yes. And then the various kinds of ammunition have, their identifying tags. So you've got poison. Our poison is actually working now, so that's going to hit morale, and you're going to notice it right away. You're going to see units go from steady down to yellow status. I can't remember what the name of it is, like slightly shaken or something. You're going to see that right away. Most poison units aren't going to have a ton of ammunition, so you have to sort of pick and choose your targets, and when you're trying to create morale shocks and exploiting already existing vulnerabilities, is going to be the way to go when you use your poison weapons. And you have units like, let's see, like these guys, they have AP arrows. So you're going to see that in there. AP, that's what it does. And you'll also see it on this one as well. So you got a mix of poison and AP. That's what it's for. There you go. We've talked about the hatred tag already. You're going to see more of them. These guys, being Doriath, they have a hatred for the Sons of Feanor. That's just how it is. I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about in terms of the multiplayer stuff. So let's go ahead and look at some of the more single-player focused features that you can expect here. So this is actually really exciting because I think in the last iteration that's publicly available, we might have broken our scenarios, or some of them were just simply broken. Well, that's been fixed. Oops, that's not what I wanted. So you're going to have a host of different historical battles here. Some of them are drawn directly from the story. In fact, you've got a five-part arc in here. So we've got the Death of Thingol, which is part 1, and you have the Battle of Menegroth, pitting the dwarves against the Sindar of Menegroth and of Doriath. And then you'll have part 3, which is the Battle of Sarnathrad, and I think part 4, would be the Ruin of Doriath. So then the Sons of Feanor come and destroy Doriath. This is a very interesting map, and I will actually take a look at just one of these. I don't want the stream to go for too long, but I will take a look at one of these, and I'll be able to kind of see them in action. But it looks hopeless, but actually Doriath has the big army, and then there's several much smaller forces here from the Sons of Feanor, I believe, that each represent one of the remaining brothers. And then it finally concludes with the sack of the Havens, and you'll have that right there. There's a few other additional ones. So this one I think is historical, and then some of them are a little bit more kind of cheeky. So you got the little non-canon alert there, and it will tell you a little bit about what's going on and what to expect from the scenario, and give you a little bit of background as well. Yeah, that one's again non-canon, and I think there's a couple others like that, such as Denethor's Doom. So you've got a whole bunch of scenarios here. One of them is a big narrative. You can play them with your friends, and some of them even have little rules. I believe this one has some rules. So if you want to play with your friends, and you want to play with developer recommended settings, then you have that all available for you just down there at the bottom. So yeah, that's pretty fun. One of the other things that you're not hearing right now is there's music. There's custom music that has been added, but I'm just playing some Rome Total War stuff, I think, in the background instead. So let's see what time we're at here, and if we have any other questions. Yes, Daniel, we are going to be getting to campaign very, very shortly here. I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the new things to see in the patch, and then we're going to round it off with a look at the campaign. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to this alpha tag here. And this is where you guys are going to come in. We need new testers for our campaign. We need some scripters. We need new members to our development team for campaign, dedicated to just doing campaign. And we also need new people to test it out. Now, you don't have to apply or formally join for the testing team, but this is going to be an opportunity to go through campaign and to look for some little bugs or crashes and things like that. Again, I want to stress that this is an alpha. This is something that we are still very much early on and still working really hard on. But yeah, in any case here, I'm going to go through all the factions that you'll see at the top. Now, you'll notice certain factions are missing. Nendan Gorthab, the Avari, and there's a couple others in there that you don't see. Dorquarthol is one of the new factions as well. That we've gone over on the channel. They're not going to be available in campaign. These are your core campaign factions, at least for the War of the Jewels campaign. These are the ones that you're going to be able to play with. Everything else, all the other missing factions, have basically been designed to not be present in campaign. So if we go back and look here, and we go to the all units, we're going to go to some of the minor factions, right? So we'll go to Feanor, you see a bunch of new units. You go over here, the Avari, they have their core roster. You go to Dorquarthol, they have their core roster. These are factions that are fun to play, but you're not really going to get any campaign support for them. Unless you're a submodder out there and you want to add your own, then please feel free. In any case, we'll go through all the little starting positions here, get a sense for where everybody's going to be, and then we'll open up one of the campaigns and take a look at the map. Yeah, the House of Fingolfin. You'll have all of the little explanations and things like that down here on the left-hand side. It gives you a good idea of what each faction does. Yeah, a little bit of a different split start here from Nargothrond. This part up north The intention for the campaign, eventually when we have scripts and things like that going on, is that it will start basically at the outset of the Dagor Bragollach. So this northern area will come under heavy attack, and then eventually you'll have Sauron and later points of the campaign, even Glaurung, charging their way down here through the mouth of Sirion. But yes, then there's Gondolin. Gondolin will be very different from a lot of the Noldor factions. They can have either a slow start or a really quick expansionist start, depending on what the player chooses early in the campaign. That's the intention anyway, once we get around to doing some serious scripting. The Philothrim, obviously much more of a really safe start here, starting down with their havens, and then they have this island that basically nobody is able to get to, except for a few factions once they reach the border of the ocean. So a really safe start here, probably going to be a good beginner faction, I expect, based on their starting location. We have the Dwarves. Eventually, it is planned to split the Dwarves into two different holds. At the moment, they are the United Naugrim of Ered Luin. There is a possibility sometime in the future that you will see this faction split up into Belagost and Nogrod, and then you'll be able to try and reunite them during the campaign as one of your big campaign goals. That's the intention anyway. Then we have the House of Haleth. I thought they would have a split start, but not this time. Again, gives you a nice little blurb. They're going to be relatively safe, as they'll start next to, like, Nargothrond and Doriath and Gondolin up there. So again, pretty safe, but still very close to the front lines. Bor will be over here to sort of contest the field with Ulfang. I don't think their starting regions are quite outlined here, but probably we'll fix that before release. Moving on, we have Ulfang, Realm of Angband, which of course starts in the Arid Engrin up north, and then Sauron. Sauron's start position is going to change. The intention here is to make them, at the outset of the Dagor Bragollach, a Horde faction. And then they have to take Minas Tirith from Nargothrond, which then becomes Tol and Gaurhoth, and that becomes their starting area. Which is, I guess, sort of similar to the Moria campaign in DAC, where you start as a Horde faction and then settle down. Or I guess the Kingsmen as well in DAC. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to it. It is something that canon likely will change in the future. So let's take a look here at the campaign map, which I know many people are waiting for. Yes, Daniel, this will be in the new update. Again, it's an alpha version of the campaign, but once this comes out the plan is Friday. Once it comes out, you'll be able to goof around with this to your heart's content. Now, there are certain things that will be changing, such as upkeep. So if we go and look at Turgon's bodyguard here, the Retainers of the King, their upkeep is quite high. I wouldn't expect it to change too much for bodyguard tier units, but I am applying slowly an upkeep system just to bring some coherency to it overall. But again, this is going to be where alpha testing comes in, so people want to, who are veterans of many campaigns, want to come in and give us some ideas on where to go with finances or scripting, etc., etc. That's basically what this alpha is going to be for. So we look a little bit here, and you can see the start of our escalation siege. Our escalation siege system. So basically what this means is that, and the idea behind it is because when I would take, major cities like Minas Tirith in games of Third Age Total War, I would always be left feeling maybe a little bit hollow afterwards, because it's such a large city, right? So the idea here is that you will take different parts of the city, but each one of these little bits here, such as the Great Market of Gondolin and the Tower of the King, those are constituent parts of a greater whole, representing a much larger city. So this is one of the grander cities of the First Age. It's a little bit anticlimactic to simply take it in a single battle. So each one of these will have a different map that is unique to it. So the Great Market will be sort of under the assumption that you have smashed your way into the city and you're now fighting in the market, whereas the Walls of Tumladen is you trying to break your way through into the Great Market. And then once that's finished, then you can take the Tower of the King. Currently, you are able to kind of move around them, but we are working on ways either through scripting or just through altering the campaign map itself, that you won't be able to just move through them. You'll have to, you'll have to basically like take one city and then move on to the other. So you won't be able to like leapfrog from, you know, taking this this city here and then go right to the tower taking. We are working on ways to sort of funnel you in there, so you have to do it in sequence. That's the idea behind the escalation campaign or the escalation sieges, and that's one of the sort of more major facets of our campaign and what makes us unique. Is having those escalation sieges and hopefully creating some really cool experiences that will be very memorable for you guys when you actually get your hands on the full campaign. In any case, let's go and take a look at the sort of basic layout here. We'll go corner to corner. So you have the sea where the Noldor and such would have landed early into the first stage before the rising of the sun. And we'll move down here and you'll see those little Falas areas. So you're going to see some of the havens and things like that here, where the Falathrim and things like that will start. Move out here to the Isle of Balar. And you have the big forest of Tawd im Dwinath. Currently, I don't think there are any Avari settlements in here. There might be already, actually. Actually, no, that's incorrect. There are definitely Avari settlements in here, and you'll get to discover them in your own time. Don't want to ruin anything for you. Then we move into Asilian, the land of the Seven Rivers. And I believe Asilian starts right around in here at Tol Galen. And you've got this little mountain range here that sort of divides the lower half of Beleriand. Moves up into Doriath. And then, of course, you have Nandan Gortheb, who will be a minor faction. They will be present on the campaign. That's something that's maybe important to note and wasn't quite clear from my explanation earlier, is that those minor factions will still be on the campaign. You just won't be able to play with them in single player. But you will interact with them, and you will be able to gain access to some of their units depending on who you are. So Nandan Gortheb. This is going to be an integral part of what we had planned for Doriath. The idea being to sort of lock Doriath behind a invisible wall, like a scripted invisible wall, representing the girdle of Doriath. But of course, no one wants to just sit there and turtle for 50 turns, so you'll have this faction here to deal with. Nandan Gortheb has been designed in a lot of ways to be very difficult for Doriath to overcome with their early game units. Once Doriath begins to tech up and get some of the stronger mercenaries, or gains access to their like heavy high tier core roster like the Region units, then Nan becomes a lot easier to manage. But until that point, when you're just running around with light spearmen and light axes and things like that, Nan can be a very, very formidable faction to try and play against. So that'll be some of the early game challenge for Doriath, basically being locked in the octagon with Nandan Gortheb and hopefully coming out on top. Moving on now. Move up here into sort of the plains area, and you're going to find factions like the Easterlings of Bor. Closer to Angband, you'll find Ulfang, and then you'll have the Sons of Feanor, who I believe have a series of fortresses along here, and I think that's I can't remember the name of it, but it's their hilltop fortress. Himring, the Hill of Himring, that's it. That should be your Hill of Himring right there. And there's this wide open land here that will be open for expansion from both the dwarves of Ered Luin, Doriath eventually once they break the Leaguer, and Asiliand as well, who will have options to move out this way, to move up towards the Sons of Feanor, and thereby gaining some new mercenary and area of recruitment units from diplomacy with them. And then, of course, if they want to, they can try and unite all of the forest-dwelling elves under one massive arboreal empire and take over the Elardi of Tawd im Dwinath and thereby gain access to some of their units. Up here, we have the Arid Angren, which is looking a little sad at the moment, but again, still under development. And I believe it's right in the middle here you'll find Angband itself, which has its own series of escalation settlements that are currently under construction. But yeah, it's quite a large campaign map. I think we've basically maxed out the settlements that you're allowed, which is just shy of 200, if I'm not mistaken. So this whole area will have up to 200 settlements or so in it, spread out across mostly in the middle. Towards the extremities, that's where your your tiles start to get a little bit longer. But right here, dead center, between Angband and Doriath and the Avari of Tower and Dweenath, this is where most of your settlement tiles are going to be located, and this is where a lot of the fighting is going to take place, which is, fairly canonical. You will have some other factions that have yet to be revealed. One of them is the Brood of Glaurung, which we've already designed and has started some light work on. I believe Castellan is working on that faction, and I am working on sculpting. Oh god, it's a lot of work. Sculpting an animating Glaurung, which is going to be a lot of fun. It will be one of the factions that adds yet another flying unit. That will bring us up to a whopping total of 2, in addition to the Heralds of Manwë. So very, very few flying units, but they will be a faction that will have access to them. But yeah, you'll see other factions like that crop up from time to time, and they will be a problem for certain areas like around Nargothrond. So you'll be able to reenact the Battle of Tumladen, or not Tumladen. Tumladen is Gondolin, but the one I'm thinking of, the one that destroyed Nargothrond, that Turin, led an ill-fated sally out to oppose a dragon army and basically got slapped down. Tumhalad, there we go, that's what it's called. You'll be able to reenact a lot of those. There will be some scripts for some of the Great Battles of Balerion. Obviously, we start with the Bragalach and all the chaos that causes, and then, of course, there will be the Nir Nayeth, which there will be scripts for as well. So there you have it. That's our campaign. It's a little bit bare bones at the moment, but I am hoping that you guys will be able to help us develop things as we move forward. That being said, if you guys want to join the community, Discord link is down in the description of all of my videos. Very easy to find. Please stop by and say hello once you guys have a chance to mess around with the release, which, as I mentioned, will very likely be coming on Friday. That is my goal. If something happens, I don't know, a meteor drops on my house and destroys my hard drive, obviously things will get pushed back. But barring any sudden and unforeseen natural disasters, the patch should be available for you guys to play on Friday, and then you can play it over the weekend. In any case, let's take a look at some questions that we may have here. I'm going to go back to our main screen. And so, yeah, now would be the time, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you have any questions about the campaign, any big things that you want to ask about, or just things about the multiplayer, or just general kind of questions about, anything and nothing in particular, now would be a good time to do that. I've got about a little bit less than 20 minutes left, I think, before I got to shut down the stream. Let's see if I missed anything. Nothing yet. Well, let's talk about some of the things that I sort of forgot to mention as we were moving throughout this. We do have a decent amount of 2D art done for a lot of the UI. It hasn't been implemented yet, as you guys have probably seen. But it is something that has been done for basically all of the Elven factions. I think the Orcs need a little bit of help, but there is a lot of existing Orcish assets, so we may just draw on some of those. We will be having some more custom voice acting coming to the mod, so a lot of things just have vanilla voice lines at the moment. I have brought in a few voice actors, and I am actually friends with a couple of them, and so they'll be doing some work for us. I will be working on a trailer, which unfortunately, due to my busy schedule, it will come out after the release of the mod. But it is kind of fun to be getting back into video editing again. That's something that I used to do really frequently for a lot of videos and previews and things like that. But I fell off the wagon a little bit. So I have a really good trailer that I've already storyboarded, and I'm hoping to bring that to life with some custom voice acting, and you're going to see a lot of that in the mod as well. I may do another voice acting preview just to sort of update some of the older ones that I've already done. I've got some stuff done for Noldor, for Vanyar, and I think one other faction as well, maybe even some of the Orcs. I will probably still do a lot of the voices for the Orcs. Those are fairly well received. If you guys haven't seen those videos, you can definitely find them on the channel somewhere. I really like doing the acting for the Orcs, but the Elves and things like that, I don't quite have the diction and and the tenor. But I really do enjoy doing the orcs. That's something I can pull off pretty decently. So that's some other things to expect. That won't be in this patch, but in the very near future, you'll see a lot of that. We'll see if we have any questions here. Sorry if it was a question earlier. How is Morgoth implemented? Is he a single unit? Does he have some special skills? Yes and yes. So Morgoth, when you come and actually play the campaign, Morgoth just sort of has a placeholder unit at the moment. And that's because Castellan hasn't finished the model. But you will be able to play with him to a certain extent. The idea, because Morgoth never really left his the safety of his fortress fastness in Angband, he will be a unit with no movement. There are some sneaky ways you can get him into battle by just like leapfrogging him through various armies. You can kind of move him that way, but I don't know how to fix that. And if you want to dedicate a lot of time to doing that and bring Morgoth to the field by like a large train of various Orcish generals that you shift him in between, then absolutely go for it. Fair play to you if you have that kind of patience. But the idea is that you won't be able to move him, barring certain cheeses. And he will be very strong, a single entity unit, much like Sauron. I will be designing a spell for him. So we've seen some of the spells today. There are others. I'm not going to go over all of them. Sauron has one. It's like a conflagration spell, which is very, very strong. There's one for the Erendil unit as well inside of Falas. That's more of a disruptive thing. Actually, I missed one of the Maiar ones, which again is another disruption spell. That's something that you can definitely expect to see. It might not be purely damage. A lot of our spells actually aren't even damage. I think maybe 2 or 3 of them actually do harm, and they're intended to do harm to other things. A lot of them are supporting in nature or for area denial and controlling enemy movement and things like that. So he will have some special skills. I haven't figured out what it is yet. I do have one that's sort of drafted, but that's not permanent yet, so I don't really want to talk too much about it. But yeah, he will be a single entity. We've got a preview for his model on our ModDB page, so if you guys want to go and check that out, leave us a little review. It's always appreciated. But yeah, I think that answers the question. Is it possible to give the AI minor buffs to their decision making? You'd have to rewrite the AI to do that. I think there's a few AIs floating around. I don't remember which one we're currently using. Or minor stat changes and not straight out cheats like the modern Total Wars. Not that I'm aware of, at least on the second part of that. But there are certain other things that you can do in terms of scripting where you can give the AI certain boosts to economy and other things like that, allowing them to sort of bend the rules but not necessarily outright break them. I'm not a big fan of the cheating system, so we will be looking at ways to get the AI onto our new system for recruitment on the campaign and hopefully make that work with them without just giving them outright cheats. I don't know if the question ever came or something, but Gondolin faction would have a general for each house or only a few. There's certainly a possibility that they could end up with a whole bunch of generals. I have learned from playing other campaigns like the original Third Age 3.0, where when you have a ton of general units, you just put a bunch of generals in there, and then by virtue of being a general unit, they replenish their own infantry, and you just have a big hammer of general units, and it breaks the campaign a little bit. So you will have lots of characters from the story, but you probably won't get them all at once. They will very likely be doled out to you in reasonable doses, so that you can't do things like that, like have like a 20 stack of generals and just run around the map and sort of trivialize the difficulty that we worked on. So I think maybe one of the exceptions to that is potentially the Sons of Feanor. But again, alpha stage, that's something we'll have to look at. Will Thargillion still be owned by Caranther? Yes. Actually, if you want to take a quick look, I will show you the length and breadth. Also, Swampert, you're in our testing group. You can very easily look at these things. But I suppose it's a good question for other people, so here we go. There you go. Believe this is Thargillion. Mount Rerir and things like that. So you have House of Feanor, the March of Maedhros. You've got Kelegorm in there. And then I think Maedhros is around here somewhere. You've got Gudufin, the March of Maedhros, where Maedhros is hanging out. Maglor is hanging out in there. Yeah, there you go. So Caranthir will be there. And then I believe you have the 2 twins down here. So there you go. Feanor currently an exception to that rule, where you have tons and tons of general units. We may keep it that way and add some other restrictions to Feanor that makes that sort of necessary to like have all those generals, or maybe something that changes. But yeah, I think all of them are available right now, and they all have their own custom bodyguards. A different unit for every single member of the faction. Yeah, he's got Hunters of Kelegorn, whereas Kudufin, I believe, will have his own general's bodyguard. Hopefully he's got it assigned already. Yeah, there you go. So he's got something different. Maedhros will, of course, have the Otorn Mighty Mo. If you'd like to come out, please. And then Maglor will, of course, have his signature Requiting Magloro. And I don't know what this guy has. Probably something cool, too. There you go. So you'll be able to create a lot of these generals. Or you'll be able to use a lot of these generals in their own custom bodyguards and sort of forge your own story. But hopefully that answers the question. Do they own Amon Ereb as well? Don't know. I honestly couldn't. My geography is a little bit spotty when it comes to Beleriand. I know some of the more general locations, but I don't know if they have Amon Ereb. I don't even know where I'd look for it. But that seems to be most of the questions that we have so far. Unless there's anything else, I will wind down the stream for now. But yeah, certainly keep an eye on our ModDB page for the update closer to this weekend. And please join the Discord, get involved with the community. We do fun stuff from time to time. I would like to do something interesting for the holidays and stuff coming up now that I'm like almost done with school and I'll have time to live and be a human again and to plan other little fun things. So expect some more holiday stuff coming out, especially around October, Christmas, that sort of thing. There is a possibility that I know some people want to organize some tournaments. That some people have come and asked me about it. They will see just sort of fun, like for fun flash tournaments and things like that popping up around the time that it releases. So yeah, it's definitely a good place to be on the Discord. No worries, Daniel. Hopefully this has whet everybody's appetite. I know campaign is something that everyone is very excited for. And it's probably a good thing for you guys to see that we actually have been working on it. There is fully functional recruitment at the moment, so you will actually be able to play on the alpha campaign, and you'll be able to kind of play through it. But I will ask for people, if you find crashes or bugs, or you just have general questions, I'll probably make a FAQ, because I'm sure we'll get the same questions over and over again. But yeah, that's a good thing to bring to our attention for sure. Alright, everybody. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this so far. I should have a replay coming out today. It's a little bit of an older replay that I just never got around to uploading, but it's a really good siege battle. Unfortunately, it's one that doesn't finish. But up until, very, very close to the end, it's probably one of the best siege battles I've ever participated in. And that is saying a lot, because I've played many, many over the 10 or 11 years of YouTube. So, in any case, my name is Jordan, also known as JMonster. Hope you guys have enjoyed the stream so far, and I'll see you next time.